Every single day, thousands of new startups, independent developer projects, and digital products launch across the globe. But despite this massive volume of output, only a fraction of a percent of these projects ever reach their intended audience. The vast majority remain entirely unseen by the broader market. When a promising tool fails to gain traction, it is rarely a reflection of poor code or bad product design. Instead, it is the result of a systemic flaw known as the discovery gap. The discovery gap is an information asymmetry problem. The builders hold the complete data about their innovation, but the digital ecosystem lacks a reliable routing mechanism to distribute that data to the stakeholders actively searching for it. In this imbalanced environment, founders spend months writing code and shipping features, only to find themselves completely unable to reach early adopters or targeted investors. This isolation has a cascading mechanical effect. Without an initial user base or public recognition, a new startup cannot generate the early validation metrics required to survive its first year. Without that baseline credibility, convincing an outsider to spend time understanding a complex, novel idea becomes nearly impossible. The cognitive friction for the evaluator is simply too high. In a fragmented internet, relying on unstructured, unverified social media posts and isolated websites guarantees that even highly effective innovations will remain trapped in obscurity. This diagram illustrates what happens when a startup launches in a vacuum. Its critical data points, what it does, who it serves, and why it matters, fail to route to the correct stakeholders. The current architecture of the web offers no centralized, standardized infrastructure to capture and verify these floating, isolated projects. UpForge was built specifically to solve this structural void. It operates as a global discovery layer positioned directly over the fragmented web. Its primary mechanism is to intercept unstructured startup data and reorganize it into an accessible, highly searchable directory. Overcoming the discovery gap requires abandoning the hope of organic, randomized virality and instead plugging directly into a centralized, structured framework. To understand why this structure is necessary, we must evaluate the digital footprint of a newly launched startup trying to gain traction. The founder immediately faces a translation problem. They must explain their highly technical product to a non-technical audience in seconds. Relying on a standalone landing page or scattered social media threads forces an external evaluator to hunt for basic information, creating immense cognitive friction. This high-friction state is exactly why so many early-stage projects fail to secure listings on trusted third-party review platforms and media directories. This visualization shows what happens when an investor or journalist encounters a wall of unclear data and unverified claims. They cannot immediately verify the project's legitimacy, and they abandon the search. This triggers a negative feedback loop. A lack of external validation restricts user acquisition, which in turn prevents the startup from generating the very trust metrics needed to grow. The founder is now trapped. Their growth is stalled not by the quality of their code, but entirely by the architecture of their public data. Without a standardized, easily readable format to present their work, builders are mechanically blocked from generating the baseline credibility required to scale. UpForge bypasses this friction by intercepting the startup and forcing its information into a standardized framework. This is the Startup Visibility Profile, a strict, rigid public listing that dictates exactly how a project presents its core value proposition. Standardizing presentation solves the translation problem, instantly removing cognitive friction. The structured card is pushed into UpForge's ecosystem directory, anchoring the startup in a navigable map. The directory categorizes the project, applying strict sector tags like AI tools or SaaS platforms. This systematic categorization is designed to support the entire spectrum of builders, from early-stage founders to student entrepreneurs launching their first prototypes. Enforcing a universal data standard levels the playing field. It ensures a solo developer's side project is just as readable and accessible as a heavily funded corporate startup. By standardizing the public presentation of these tools, the platform converts complex, hard-to-read innovations into instantly digestible digital assets. But once the data is structured and categorized, how does it actually convert into credibility? In a digital ecosystem, credibility is not an abstract feeling or a vague reputation. It is a verifiable digital trust signal, emitted by a recognizable centralized platform. External stakeholders rely heavily on these centralized trust signals to mitigate their own risk when they engage with unknown entities. This routing diagram shows how the information flows. For investors, the organized ecosystem directory acts as a filtering mechanism, allowing them to rapidly verify a project's early potential. Early adopters and core users utilize the same structured search to confidently find, evaluate, and test new artificial intelligence models. Media researchers and journalists require these verified directories to safely source and report on emerging technologies without the risk of highlighting unverified projects. Even the founders themselves use the directory to map out their specific sectors, identifying potential collaborators and strategic partnerships in adjacent markets. Compared to the initial chaotic void where data was lost, this intentional structure guarantees that specific information is delivered precisely to the audience actively looking for it. Because the platform is centralized, these trust signals stack and compound the longer a structured profile remains active and updated within the ecosystem. A centralized discovery layer replaces the need for randomized luck with targeted, high-trust digital routing. This macro visualization maps the aggregate effect of thousands of these structured profiles interacting simultaneously within a single, globally accessible network. Historically, generating these high-value trust signals required immense venture capital, residence in an elite geographic tech hub, or access to legacy industry connections. The UpForge structural model bypasses these legacy bottlenecks entirely by moving the verification process online. The operational philosophy here is that structural innovation should never depend on a founder's initial funding level or their physical location on a map. By functioning as a global discovery platform, the system provides equitable visibility access to independent builders worldwide, regardless of their background. The network maintains this transparency by relying strictly on publicly available innovation data and carefully verified founder-submitted profiles. This strict adherence to transparent, standardized data strengthens the credibility of the entire network, elevating all participants rather than just a select few. By maintaining a structurally sound, globally accessible network, the system actively democratizes the visibility required to turn a local idea into a global product. The mechanics of this discovery system follow a strict causal chain. Structured public visibility creates verifiable opportunity. That verified opportunity then inevitably generates compounding momentum for the founder, pushing the project past its initial friction points. And the final outcome of this chain is clear. Sustained momentum is the engine that builds widespread, scalable innovation. UpForge is building toward a long-term vision of becoming the definitive, trusted global discovery layer across all technological industries. For early-stage founders and independent developers building meaningful tools, passive waiting is no longer a viable strategy. You must actively claim your public presence. To bridge your own discovery gap and join a growing global ecosystem of innovators, submit your structured startup profile at upforge.org.